much. It's wonderful to be with you. It's wonderful that Donna Schachter's with you. I'm so glad to see so many kids that I know here. I'm happy to be with you on this special occasion. I met Dr. King many times, and his wife and his children. His oldest daughter, who has since died, was a wonderful friend to me. And he was a wonderful friend to my father. They had a very special relationship. My father met Dr. King in Chicago many years ago at a conference on religion and race. 2 words, my father said, that should never be uttered in the same sentence. But my father asked, when was the first conference on religion and race in the Torah? Does anybody know? When in the Torah did we hear about a conference on religion and race? Was when Moshe Rabbeinu went to Paro and said, let my people go. What happened? You read the story in the Torah and in the Parsha this week and the coming weeks, and you see what happened. My father identified Jewish history with the history of African Americans. My father had lived in Nazi Germany. He fled Europe and he came to this country without a penny in his pocket. His mother and 3 of his sisters were stuck in Europe and couldn't get out, and they were killed by the Nazis. My father knew what it meant, what anti-Semitism meant, what murder meant. And when we saw on television scenes of African American children trying to go to public school, or to universities, or to go and have something to eat in a restaurant, and being thrown out, not allowed to go to school, and police with German Shepherd dogs charging at people, beating them, eating them, biting them, and water hoses spraying demonstrators who were peaceful. We were all horrified. Dr. King taught nonviolence. If somebody comes to hit you, don't hit back. You stand there until the other person is ashamed. And that's how we felt in those days. We were ashamed of white Americans who were hurting black people. We were ashamed. And so one day, on a Friday, right before Shabbat, in March 1965, a telegram came. We were very busy getting ready for Shabbat. The telegram was from Dr. King, asking if my father would come to Selma. That's the picture from Selma, Alabama, to come to Selma and participate in a march. There had been efforts in Selma to march. For what, do you know? For the right to vote for African Americans. If you were black, it was almost very, very difficult in parts of this country to vote in an election. So they were going to have a big march. And they tried. And what happened? The police rioted against the demonstrators with tear gas, with water hoses, with dogs, and people were beaten. They tried week after week until finally the President of the United States said he would send federal troops to protect the marchers. And my father was asked to join them. And it was a very nervous Shabbat for us. And after we made Havdalah, my mother and father and I went downstairs, and my father, I remember this very vividly, kissed me goodbye and turned around and walked and got into the taxi to go to the airport to go to Selma. And I thought to myself, I may never see him again, because it was so dangerous in those days. When he came back from Selma, some of the marchers were given this leg from Hawaii that someone brought. My father said that when he was in Selma marching, a little boy came over to him because he had a beard and said, "Are you Santa Claus?" But my father said he felt there was something very special about that march. He felt it was holy. It reminded him, he said, what it was like to walk with Hasidic Rebbes in Europe. He said, I felt my legs were praying. What does it mean? You can pray sometimes with your legs when you bring about justice and peace. And that is our contribution. Where does the dream come from of Dr. King? The dream of peace. Where do we hear that for the first time in the world? In our Torah. We hear about a dream of peace from the prophets. And what does it take to have peace in the world? It takes justice, righteousness. We can build a world of justice and bring peace in this world. That's our gift as a Jewish people to the whole world. just tell you one last story. The last time I saw Dr. King was at a convention of rabbis, the Rabbinical Assembly Convention of conservative rabbis from all over the country. And they were honoring my father's birthday, and they invited Dr. King to give a lecture. So after dinner, all the rabbis and their wives, because in those days there were only male rabbis, all gathered in a room. There were about 1,000 people. And we were waiting for Dr. King. And when he came in the room, everybody stood up and linked arms. This is how we used to link arms, like this. And we sang, "We shall overcome," in Hebrew. And Dr. King was so happy. He said, "I've heard 'we shall overcome' so many different places, so many, but never before in Hebrew." A lot of people in those days would sing "we shall overcome" in Hebrew at Passover, at our Seder. And in fact, a couple of weeks later, Dr. King and his family were supposed to join us at our home for our Passover Seder. Because you know that so much of the civil rights movement was about Exodus, Yetzias Mitzrayim, yes? And Dr. King was often called the Moses of African Americans. And then a terrible thing happened. As you know, somebody shot Dr. King. My parents and I went to the funeral, and we marched from the chapel to Dartmouth College for a couple of hours. Everybody very sad and very solemn, and singing often songs from the civil rights movement. We lost something very great with Dr. King, a very important person. He inspired us. He made us think about something. He made us realize what it's possible for a person to become. It's possible for a person to inspire a whole world to take hard hearts, like Pharaoh's hard heart, and soften it, and change the whole country. We can do that. There's a dream, and it's our Jewish dream. It's our gift, and that's why it's so important for us as Jews, as Arnie said a moment ago, to remember what we stand for. It's not enough to just be a Jew, but to stand for Jewish principles and to remember that we, Jewish people, have a special gift to give to the world. Thank you.